Questions on Chapter 8 on VLSM? Everybody got that one? Okay. All right, let's mention a couple of things first before we get into the material. I am going to go ahead and open Chapter 9 tests on up, I hope later today. Meant to this weekend, but again, get to. I'll come back to that in a second. So I'll go ahead and make it available to you if you want to get on ahead, but it's not going to be due until the 15th. Okay.
Last week when I was going to the chapter test for number 8, it kept saying that it wasn't released. Like it wasn't opened up for me to actually do the test.
Okay, you should have written me at that point and told me, so that I'd know about it, because it should have been active.
Yeah, it's
Because if y'all don't tell me, I don't know that it's not active. Because normally I've got them activated to start whichever Monday they're supposed to be. So 8 should have been active last week, this week, and next week. I'll look at it in just a second. But if y'all go to take tests or whatever and stuff's not active, you need to let me know. Because it does not tell me, and when I go in and look to see what's activated, I actually have to go into the test specifically to look at it. It's not something that shows on a whole long list of things showing that this test is active, whatever. It doesn't show that to me unless I click on into the test. I don't have any, so I'm not going to notice that it's not activated if nobody says it's not activated. So the 8's due on the 8th. 9, I'm pretty sure, is due the 15th. Let me go in there and look, because I got the dates on them all. I do have the dates and I can see that easily, but I don't go into Cisco a lot of the time, and I don't go looking down through it. So but I'm pretty sure I've got all the dates out there. On the due dates for the test. The assignments, I may not have them all out there in Cisco. And I don't think I have them all there in Blackboard yet. I was going to work on that, trying to get that caught on up. And that's on my list of stuff. If y'all let me know when there's stuff not there, then I can go in at that point and fix it. And during the week, normally that's going to be within hours. The weekend, it's usually going to be that day, although like yesterday, I did not go into email, so I did not look at any emails from y'all from Saturday night until just now, just before I walked in here. 8. I don't have a I had a due date out there on that stuff. 8 doesn't have, has not been activated yet. And I'm sure I had activated it, because I'm sure when I look at my sheet, when I go back down to the office, it's going to have check marks by it, which I only put check marks down there when I actually do the stuff. All right, it is activated now, so after class, y'all can take it whenever, okay, through the 8th. I'm not activating 9 at the moment because I want to make sure that the 15th really is deadline on it. So let me go to one of the other sections. See if by chance I put stuff in there. In the online section, I may have got. It's not activated in anywhere. Okay, I'll get Walker real quick. That stuff's disappeared. That means I'm gonna have to go back and look at some other stuff I can get to the office, so that delays me again on getting more work done. And I'm having to backtrack. One of those chapters, 9, 10, and 11, y'all got 2 weeks off out of it, which one it is. So that's where I'm going to have to check my master sheet. Okay. I've got them all. Chapter 8 activated in all 3 sections now. All right. So if you go to take a test or go do whatever, and it's not out there, you need to let me know on it. Okay? Because I was supposed, according to all the stuff I had done all of it setting up through the 8th in all of my classes. Except for the 2601, I've got to check that one. Not sure, this week may not be set up in there. No, 11 is, because it's 2 weeks. Yeah, 11 is. So I am set up for everything through, was set up for everything through next week. And had done them all. I don't know where that all just went to right there. But Mr. Burlock made a comment last week that work he had done had disappeared and setting things up. So, but if you do have problems on stuff, that stuff's not there, email me and tell me so that I can check it. As I say, it does not show that stuff to me where I can just see a chart that shows me what I've done. Y'all follow? So that When I go in there in Cisco, I'm seeing like that, and say I have laid out more stuff down here, but this part I won't say I had laid out onto here because I may not have gotten that done. But when I come in here to assignments, it will show me if I put the due dates down here, which 8, 9, 10, 11, I have not put due dates. I've got in my mind that I remember putting May the 6th on that.
Are those due over spring break?
Hmm?
Are all those due over spring break?
Wait a minute, what?
Are all of those due for spring break?
Are all of those due when?
Over spring break?
No.
Just 8 and 9?
8's the only thing. 8 is due on April the 8th, the Monday after spring break. There's nothing due during spring break because it's break. And none of your classes should you have assignments due during spring break. Okay? Because it's days off when y'all aren't in school. And actually, most of the faculty won't be here either because they're taking off also on leave. 9, I'm pretty sure is due on the 15th, but I'm not for sure on that. So I've got to check my master schedule for that. Okay? Actually, I think I've got it in Blackboard marked there, but I thought it was marked it here too, but I may not have marked it here. And then 10 and 11. 11 is going to be due on May 3rd. I can tell you that. I'm not sure these two on 15, 22nd, and 29th when actually I think 11 may be this one may be 15th, this one 22nd, and this May 3rd, which is a Friday. Okay? The hands-on skills final is due on May the 6th, which is a Monday. However, we should have done it on probably the Monday. We should do it on the Monday before that, on the last Monday in here. And then the final exam, likewise. But there you can see where I put in the dates. The only way I know on the activation is by actually clicking on the exam. And then from here, this is where I create the activation. And here's where I can go to see what activations I've got out there. Okay? So notice I've got to go several steps into the whole thing to see it. Okay? And no, I'm not going to be coming in here unless I'm doing activations. So I would never go into that two-step process normally, unless I was setting up the activation originally or somebody said the test wasn't activated. But I wouldn't be any other time going in there just to go into them. So then if I go into manage activations, now it does show we've got an activation from today through April the 8th. Okay? So then if you had written later today and said after somebody writes me later today from one of the other classes and says it's not there, I'll come to here and look and I'll go, wait a minute, it is there, I'll put it there this morning and write back and tell them that, or that I'll see it's not, just like I just did, and I'll set the activation up. Sometimes also, because of how it's set there, I do get the date or the time wrong on it. So, like this one's due on April the 8th at 11:59 p.m. I do have to set the p.m. on there, and if I'm doing it in the morning, it's defaulting to a.m. If I'm doing it at night, it's defaulting to p.m. Okay? Unless it's after 11 o'clock at night that I'm doing it, and then it's defaulting to a.m. And so if I'm doing it in the morning or really late at night, I have to remember to change my a.m.s and p.m.s. So there are sometimes I have set tests without meaning to expire at noon instead of midnight. Does that make sense? Because probably forgot to flip it, okay? Or that it just goofed up. Shouldn't goof up. All right. So, final exam, and if you look on the Blackboard calendar, that one I think is showing fully out there. But remember, Blackboard and Cisco are not connected. Okay? Those two sites are not connected, and that's the thing on me getting your grades from one to the other. I have to manually look at one site, look at your grade, go to the other site and type it in. It does not, those of you that took SimNet for Comp 1000, they automatically transferred grades, usually. This does not, and I have to literally, every grade that gets transferred, I literally have to sit there, look to see what the grade is, and then type it in the other location. And make sure I'm still on the correct row for the correct person. So, and I've just got through chapter 8 on here because the 2451 classes and the 2601 class are the ones that aren't done, I believe. Pretty sure I know the 2601's not fully set up. My 2413, my 1220, and I thought I had another 1 or 2 classes set up, but apparently not. But I did put the final exam down here, because that will be available that weekend for you to do. The final lab one, if anyone's not done the midterm one, that's got to be done beforehand and has to be done on a separate day. And it was due before last week. And the reason I was delayed getting down here is somebody was just coming in to do it today. And they've had weeks, and y'all remember y'all did it several weeks ago. And I've had it posted out there since. And I had the previous week students writing and going because I had 15th in one spot and the 22nd in the other spot, writing and going, which one is it due on? And I'm going, well, aim for the earlier one that I didn't mean to put 15th and 22nd. And yet I still had students writing last Wednesday and Thursday going, I need to come do it on Friday because I just realized you have to come do that it's not something you do online, the cabling lab assignment. And I had at least 2 write and tell me that they thought the cabling lab assignment was going to be done online. I'm not sure how they thought they were going to do a cabling lab assignment online. So if you have not finished it, remember, you've got to get with me to get that thing finished. Okay? The last week, which I was coming to, that Wednesday, we're not going to have class that day, or we'll meet just shortly. I'll be here at 10 o'clock that morning, but I've got to be at the Walker Convention Center shortly after 11 o'clock that morning, so I can meet at 10 for 45 minutes or so. But hopefully all of you got your lab final done on Monday. But I can come over here and meet with people early or whatever if they didn't finish it. Because the Kiwanis are doing their Distinguished Service Award luncheon that day, which is their big project that they now do. And they're recognizing Sheriff CIST and it's a retired banker, and I can't think of his name right at the moment, Eddie somebody, as the 2 recipients, and he's over in Walker County, but obviously CIST is over here in Catoosa. I'm taking pictures at the luncheon that day, and I'm sitting at the school's table that day because the foundation bought a table and I get to sit with them. So, which for a change saves me some money. Because if I didn't get to sit with them, I got to pay $50 to go to it to take pictures for them as a member of the club. So that will be that day. So let's say, actually probably, unless I'll probably remind you to get closer, unless there's people that need to finish the lab final that day, or unless somebody's made an appointment to see me that morning, like online ones to do the lab final, I may not even come to this campus that Wednesday. I may just go to Walker that morning. Because after all, I'm just going to be just below Rock Spring, and the convention center's there, right there above Rock Spring. If I come over here, I got to go by the other campus, come over to here, then turn around and go almost to the other campus and back up to the convention center. So it would save me a little bit of gas. I don't know if y'all have noticed, the price of gas has gone up in the last few weeks. Because we've gone from $2 a gallon gas to $2.50 a gallon gas. So it does cost more. So that'll be on that Wednesday. That Thursday, I will not be at the college. I am going to Amazon's conference in Atlanta that day, which I'm going to try to send y'all the invitation information on it later today, that if any of you want to go to it, that you can go to it. You just have to get yourself there, etc. Okay, it's at the World Congress Center. I went last spring. Jill West, who's an adjunct for us, and actually I thought she was editor of one of the authors of that book, but she's one of the authors of the newer version of that book. She and I went to it last year, and it was really good. They had some real good exhibits there, and they had a number of events really good on that day. A lot of good speakers. So I'm going to go to that on that Thursday. And if I wasn't going to that on that Thursday, I wouldn't have been here Thursday anyway, because there's a conference in Indianapolis that Hillsdale College is doing that's also free, that I would have loved to have gone to, but it actually starts the day before, and for me to go to the luncheon, I definitely missed that. And then it runs all day on Thursday. And so I couldn't do it. I've got 3 things at the same time. So I'll make 2 out of the 3, but not the 3rd. Now, when I send you the stuff on the Amazon, it is a 2-day event. The 2nd day is what I'm going on. It's on May 1st and May 2nd. The 1st, they've got training type things that they charge for. So if you go out there and look at it, you're going to see that on May 1st they've got, it's meeting that day too, but it's a number of things that they're charging $160 or something for each to train you on stuff. The 2nd day is free. Okay? I'm not going the 1st day because I can't afford to pay to attend to things. That it is down there in downtown Atlanta at the World Congress Center, which is right there by State Farm, whatever they want to call that, the basketball court, and beside the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Okay? So that Wednesday and Thursday, Wednesday I'll be in and out of here at school. Thursday I won't be here at all. Okay? So plan accordingly on that. And then I say y'all's final will be available that Saturday, Sunday, and Monday online, just like you've been taking the other test. It will be twice as long as your other, so you get an hour and a half to do it, and you've got about 50 questions on it covering the whole book. Does everybody follow on that? So be prepared on that one. You do have a practice final out there that I think is still active right now. If it's not active, and I can only activate it for 90 days, and I activated it at the beginning of the semester, and somewhere in here the 90 days is going to run out, which I really think is during spring break. Okay? So I'm going to try to go back out there and activate it further, because I can do another activation. But before we change times, would have let me, but typically things I activated in the past when there was a time change involved before they occurred, I goofed them up. So I don't do that at Cisco site anymore. So if you do go to do the practice one and it's not active, let me know on that. But I say it should be, at this point, should be active. And we can flip over there and look real quick and see. And I don't think y'all see all of the stuff that's up here, but if I go to practice final, looks like it's gray on that. Nope, it's not even showing it's been activated. And I know I had activated that, but I will activate it later today, so then it will be active also the rest of the semester through the 6th. Okay? So that's available to you, and you can do the practice final as many times as you want. Okay? Questions? So that's where we're going to be going the rest of the semester. Okay? As far as I know, I don't think I've got anything else going to be popping up with me away during the next few weeks. But I think during the week, each week, that after spring break, I'll be here. Now, next week, don't look for me necessarily answering emails every day, because I will be on annual leave all week, and actually I don't have to touch anything about school during the week since I'm on annual leave. Supposed to be being paid not to be here. Okay? Because that's vacation. But I do plan to check emails at least every couple of evenings or sometime during the day. I may check them every day, but I may not, because I am going to get away a little bit. Because the last week and the previous week, I know the previous week was 65 hours, and I don't think I counted everything into there that I worked, and last week was similar again. It was last Thursday I went to Skills USA. I left at lunchtime. Actually, I had to come over here and get some parts to go, and because I was headed down there, and that morning I realized that I had the routers and switches that I had to take with me, but I hadn't gotten the cables. So I had to come back over here to get the cables. Well, when I finally found the cables, I realized why I didn't take the cables. Because they were hidden on the floor back there in the back corner of the room. They're not back there right now because they're sitting in the back seat of my car still at the moment. So I hadn't noticed them sitting on the floor, and they had been on the table right there beside Philip for a while, but somebody had moved them. So I'd overlooked them. Luckily, I thought about that before I got down to Atlanta and discovered I didn't have them. Although we did the contest in the Cisco training room down there at Atlanta Tech, so I could have gotten cables from them to do it, but it worked a little better this way. So then Friday we ran the contest all day. I had to be at Atlanta Tech at 8 o'clock that morning, and I think it was about 3 o'clock that afternoon when I left Atlanta Tech. And actually my contest ran a lot smoother and quicker this year than the previous 2 years when I did programming. That my judges and I did real good on getting it all together, and that we got the 4 students through there. And we were actually done at 1 o'clock. And had eaten lunch in the process too, because they brought in subs from Jason's Deli. All right. So that went well. There was a whole bunch of technical college students there. If any of you are students next year still here at GNTC, and I'm not sure which ones of you are graduating when, you may well want to consider going down there next year. The school pays for you to go. The networking competition, internetworking, basically, y'all could have done at this point, you could have done the contest. Okay? There might have been something on the hands-on part that you would have had a hard time with. But I think just about everything on the hands-on you had done. You've made the cables. You would have known how to do the VLSM assignment that they had, which was just a simple one that it was split it on the 20s, borrowing 3 bits and then borrowing 1 more bit and getting those 2 subnets. So what you learned in here, you knew how to do that part. You definitely know how to make cables. They make straight cables for us. And then y'all know how to cable the machines together, to cable the switches and routers based off the illustration. So you could have come very close, and the test on it, when I had gone through setting up the test with the other one that was my co-chair, I think everything on there was stuff. There was OSI model stuff and TCP IP model stuff, and I think there might have been a little subnetting. There was some protocol, a few things, but it was things y'all had actually learned in this course. So we've been saying you need Cisco 1 and 2, but if you just had Cisco 1, I think a student would have done pretty well on it anyway. I know, like on the cabling one, you had to write down for us what the colors were for 568A and 568B. Of the 4 contestants, they didn't all know their colors correctly. Hopefully y'all all know your colors correctly at this point, because I've sort of beat that one in your head. All right, any other questions for me? So, but I say that'll be next spring, and in the fall, that if any of you are interested, get with me on it. And particularly those of you that go on and take the other 3 Cisco courses that are the cybersecurity people, like Leslie, you're cybersecurity, right? Are you cyber? You're cyber? Are you cyber? Are you cyber, Philip?
Yeah.
Okay, so all 5 of you are going to take all 4 Cisco courses and finish by fall, so on their Cisco class, because you'll take 3 and 4 in the fall. You'll take 3 the first 8 weeks, 4 the second 8 weeks. That's really not a problem. There's not much in either one of the courses. There's only 8 chapters in each of the 2 books also. So that puts you a chapter a week. And in 4, there's only labs to do in 3 of the 8 chapters. So that's the reason I put them into the same semester. So definitely think about doing the internet working at Skills USA next spring. Okay? And if you win it and make at least a 70 score on it, on the whole thing, and I think 3 out of the 4 of mine, of the ones that were entered in it this year, had over 70. The winner had a score, actually it was on a 1,000-point scale, and the winner had a score of something like 820. So, but they were all over, so the winner gets to go on to Louisville this year for the Nationals. And next year, the Nationals will actually be in Atlanta, so we're going to have the state competition at the World Congress Center next March, and then in July they'll have the national competition again at the World Congress Center. There is also an IT applications There's something information technology systems. I'm not exactly sure what that one does. There's a programming contest, which is writing programs, and that you're given 1 or 2 assignments and writing the programs, and also given a test on writing programs, and you get to choose the language you want to write it in. And then seems like there's another computer one out there too. The programming one is the one I did the previous 2 years, and probably, I don't know if the guy that did it this year is going to do it again next year, but he basically went with what I had done before, and I helped him still on it, and that it had a mathematical type problem to do and a business problem to do. And then the test actually was a lot of stuff that you did in 1305 or will do in 1305 if you take that, but if not. There's an applications one, which goes into the Word the Office applications, doing some stuff on that. And then there's an IT Essentials or something, which is just a basic one, computer one. So there's a number of different contests there for you. All right. Chapter 9 is getting into the transport layer. So we're moving on up another layer. Now you're going to be working with segments. We've done frames, we've done packets. Now segments is our packet data unit, or a PDU. Okay? So on the transport layer, as it comes down, the whole chunk of data is handed to it that's going to be sent. And what happens at the transport layer is it breaks it into segments. And all it's doing at that point, none of all the extra stuff that occurred when we looked on the next 2 layers down. The only thing it's doing there is breaking that big chunk of data up in smaller pieces of the size that they'll be recognized that the network can carry on it, because it can only carry up to a certain size segment. Okay? Then, so the only thing it essentially is doing when it does that is breaks it up and sticks a label on it that tells it which segment is it at this point, so that when it gets to the other end and it's passed up from the network layer, it's just the segment passed up, remember, because remember all the other stuff, the IP addresses and all of that other type things, the length and the security on it and everything else, time to live, and all of that stuff is stripped off before it gets sent up. So the only thing there is just the chunk of data with the number that tells us which number it is. That way then it can take all of those segments once it gets them all in and put them all back together and have that big chunk of data. Okay? So it's just labeled them so it knows how to put them all back together. When they go to move some historical buildings and stuff, they do the same type of approach. That they may not be able to pick up the building and move it. If it's a wooden one, usually they can just go in and move those things. But if it's a brick one, a lot of times they got to literally take them apart, because if they didn't take it apart, when they go to lift it up, it'd fall all apart anyway if it's some old building. Does that make sense, y'all? In the process of doing it, if they do it correctly, they will label every one of those bricks when they're taking it apart. And then when they put it back together, build the building back together, they will literally put every brick back in exactly the same position where it was before. Y'all follow on that? Likewise with the boards and everything else on it. Okay? But particularly the bricks, because the bricks don't do real well for picking up and moving. The wood structure you can do pretty good on putting different things under it and lifting it up and then putting it on a truck and moving it down the road. But the bricks, if you try to do that, they tend to fall and go every direction, right? Although sometimes if you're just moving at a short little distance, you can do that. But if you're going to move it a decent amount, you're probably going to have to disassemble it and put it back together. And there's reasons for having to move buildings like that, and if they're really of a historical value to us, that we definitely want to move them and preserve them. Difference will be with the new one is that it will have new concrete in it versus the old one, that it's new cement in it instead of old cement, but they'll try to make it look like old cement in the process too. But it will be exactly the same laid out structure when they get through with it as it was before. So literally, if it was brick one sitting right here inside of the wall, when they put it back together and put it up in the new spot, brick one will sit in exactly the same spot. Does that make sense? And think about it. Bricks, would you have really thought about bricks would need to be done on that? If it's other type stuff, or stones or whatever, you probably need to do it so they all fit together correctly, right? But bricks, you think about bricks as all being the same, but they really aren't. There's a little bit of difference on different bricks. And so that you can get exactly that same weather, look, etc. to the whole thing. Okay? And where it's the same building. The same thing is happening when you're sending information across the network. On the transport layer, it's taking that big chunk of data, split it into small pieces, label each one of them. Then when it gets to the other end, it knows how to put it all back together, and you've got the same identical big chunk of data. Or if you go to mail something, there's a maximum size of what you can mail. If you're bigger than that, you're going to have to get them to bring a truck in. But there's a maximum size of what you can put on a truck or a train also. Okay? Although you probably wonder about if there really is a maximum size of some of the stuff we come up on out on the highway out there. But there is a maximum size, but they will let you go a little bit bigger in some cases. And y'all watch them moving mobile homes and mobile offices and stuff around, and boats that are actually bigger than the lane of the highway. Now there's only so much they get to go bigger, and the highway department says, no, you can't take that down the road. If they're going to move anything any bigger, they got to disassemble it. Okay, if you're going to mail it through the post office and it's bigger than, I think it's 70 inches long, okay, you got to disassemble it and ship it in several packages. If you do disassemble it and you mail it to somebody that you've gone and bought some nice thing that you're going to send to me, you want to label it so when I get it, I can open up all the packages, and I've got this pile of stuff laying there now on the floor in the living room. I want to know how to put it back together, and you should have labeled the parts so that I know how they all go back together. Does that make sense? That's just the numbering we're doing on segments. And so when you took that, whatever it was, apart to ship it to me, you made it into segments. And you would have labeled it in some way for me. Now, you may or may not have labeled it on the parts, because you may have written it down on a piece of paper, drawn a picture of what the thing looked like, each of the parts. But you got it labeled there for me so that I could put it back together. And that then we send it. And then when I put it back together, I've got identically the same thing you sent to me. Does that make sense? So that's all the segmenting is doing. No addressing involved. Now, the other piece that is going on there, so we are putting the segment number, and we are putting, and we've got the chunk of data. One other piece of information that we will put on there that's always included there for you that you need to know on, but pretty much this is it, is that it's going to put the port number on there also. So now you're dealing with port numbers. Along with the port number, if you take the port number and the protocol, you've actually got the socket. So you're going to see sockets mentioned out there also. Okay? Actually, that's not right. I just told you something wrong there. It's the port number. Oh, the address. This the socket. The socket's going to be the URL with the port number. So that's really further on down, but you're going to put the port number on here on the transport layer. The port number is going to tell you which application does it go with. Because remember, it's been associated with an application from up at the very top. Okay? And didn't we talk about the port numbers in previous chapter, one of the previous chapters, a couple of chapters ago, where HTTP uses what port number? Not F. It's not till this chapter. In any event, no port turn. It tells you about ports in the chapter, but it doesn't tell you what port numbers are in the chapter. Okay. There's not a whole lot in here, but there is there. So they do talk about this socket pair. And so they do talk about sockets in here. And that the socket is going to give to you the IP address and the port number. I don't know why we discussed port numbers in a previous chapter, but I don't remember which chapter it was. It was back before 6, before you got into all that addressing stuff. Now the port number is going to tell us the application. HTTP is going to use port 80. Secure HTTP, which is HTTPS, remember? And I know I talked about that with y'all. Uses what port number? Because I distinctly remember talking about the HTTPS is secure HTTP. 453. Correct? And then 443. Sorry. Okay, I was close. And actually on tests, I would have been close enough. Because on a multiple choice question, they wouldn't have given us 453 and 443. But 453. And Thursday afternoon, which doesn't affect y'all, but Thursday afternoon I'm scheduled to take the Cloud Plus exam. So Thursday afternoon I'm not going to be available also talking about. And somewhere in the next month I want to take the first A Plus exam, and probably the second half of the later in the month I'll probably do the second A Plus exam as soon as they give me a voucher. That I'm supposed to get my voucher later in the month. And I start taking a course on Linux tomorrow night. All right, so that's what's going to be happening on the transport layer. You've got 2 protocols that you're going to be using there. And those are the only 2 you really have to remember on this layer. Although there are other protocols used, everything that's going to tell you about the transport layer is going to always talk about just 2 protocols, because just about everything on transport layer comes down to just those 2 protocols. You've got the UDP and you've got TCP. And notice the TCP in terms of what our protocol suite is. It's TCP/IP, right? And we said IP was our big one that we used on the network layer, correct? Except we mentioned there were some others had been used there, because you had the IPX that Novell used to use that I mentioned to you, because you could see that turn up on a certification exam still, although it's an obsolete one, but I have seen it still turn up recently. If it's a protocol that ends in X, it most likely belongs to Novell. Okay? So if you ever see one that's got an X on the end on an exam, look for Novell for your answer. Okay? Or likewise, if they ask you about what is the protocol, some protocol for Novell, even if you're not sure what in the world their protocols were, just look for the one with the X, and you probably got it right there. Because the others probably, they're not going to throw you any others with an X on them. They'll throw you those non-similar ones to Novell, and so you can get it. Likewise, Apple. I told you what's the key on knowing a lot of Apple's protocols. What was the key giveaway for a lot of Apple protocols? Anybody remember? The word talk. Okay? That they put talk on the end of their protocol names. A lot of them, not all of them. But if you see talk as part of a protocol name, think Apple. Or if you're needing to find the protocol name for something for Apple, think talk. Novell, think X. Okay? Now as far as TCP/IP, anything except those rules. Okay? So you've got TCP and UDP. TCP is Transmission Control Protocol, and UDP is User Datagram Protocol. Big difference between the two. UDP is connectionless. TCP is connection oriented. And there's some stuff you're going to do that gets sent across the network that uses TCP, and some stuff that uses UDP. And you're using them both all the time. Okay? Now, as a user, you never know it. As the security person running the network, or the network administrator, since that's what all 5 of you are training to be, you are going to know it, and you're going to need to know it, okay, from that viewpoint. But for the normal person sitting there, they're not going to have any idea what TCP or UDP is, or know that they're really using them, okay? The difference between the two is that with UDP, you're sending the information and you're trusting it gets there. Okay? TCP, because it's connection oriented, when you send the information, you will get a verification back that it was received. So if you use TCP, you know it was received. Okay? Probably all of you have transferred files at some point or another from one machine to another machine. You've definitely done it in Blackboard, that you've uploaded your files to there. If it's using the FTP protocol, and because like when I do web pages, I actually use FTP to transfer my web pages from my local machine to the server that I put them on in Western Canada. Okay? When I used to have them hosted on AT&T, they got transferred to a server sitting in New Jersey. And so they've been a couple of different places, but for about 15, 16 years now, they have gone to Western Canada, Calgary, Canada. When I go to transfer those files out there, I actually use FTP to do it. Likewise, when you upload your pictures to a lot of the online sites. That if you use Shutterfly like I use, it's using FTP to actually transfer those files. If you use the Google Photos, it's going to do the same thing. If you used to use Flickr from Yahoo, it's the same thing. Except I think Flickr closed, didn't it? Or anybody know? I think they shut it down. Because I had pictures out there, and I remember them writing me a couple of times in the last few months saying they're shutting it down, and if I want those pictures to get them off there. They're actually all of them. That was an additional site I was using, and people had tried to tell me it was a lot better than using Shutterfly. I tried it a little bit, and I went, no, I'm staying with Shutterfly. So all of my stuff's sitting in Shutterfly. The other part is that if it goes away from out there, I've still got them sitting on my machine. So when any of them go to shut down, and actually on Shutterfly, they've taken over several of the other photo services over the years. They were an early one that they started in '99. Can't remember what the owner did. He was developer of something else on the internet prior to that, and sold that, and then started Shutterfly. But he was one of the pioneers on doing the World Wide Web. Some stuff from like 95, 96 sold out for the millions of dollars there in the late 90s in the dot-com boom, and started Shutterfly and has run it ever since. And I can't remember what it was he did, but there was some service he did early on. And then he went to doing photo storage and editing. Big part is photo storage and printing. So Kodak had theirs early on. He has bought out their storage thing. So pictures I had on Kodak, which was actually the first place I stored pictures at, because that was the first digital camera I used, was a Kodak back in 1997. If y'all went to use that camera, y'all go, it was horrible. But it was one of the very first digital cameras, and it was good for its time. But you could only take 7 pictures on it, and then you had to go hook up to the computer, and I mean hook up to the computer. You had to hook a, I think it was a serial cable. I don't even think it was a USB cable that you had to hook to the computer then to download your 7 pictures, and then you go take 7 more pictures. Second thing was, it did not, I don't even think it shot in color, but it sure seems like the pictures I've got from them did not even shoot in color, but maybe they did, and it was just such horrible colors. I do know a couple of the pictures I still got from there were of snow falling in Washington, D.C. And I could see the snowflakes and everything. Quality was really, really lousy. It seems like it had a half instead of where we've got the 5 megabits, actually the 10, 15, 20 megabit pictures now. If you get above 5 does actually good enough to get you real good quality 8x10s. Anything above that's is overkill. I literally mean that. Okay, that once you got to 5 to 6, 5 or 6 is really, for most people, is all they need. But if you go buy a camera now, it's going to give you somewhere 15 to 20, I think, and it may be a bigger number now, because I think my camera, which is about 3 years old, gives me 15, 16. You looking at the number for me?
Oh, for megabits?
Uh-huh.
I was looking at the cameras, I'm not gonna lie.
Huh?
He's looking at it.
I was looking at a camera to see what its megabit thing was.
Yeah, that's what I thought you probably were. What size are they now? Because I haven't shopped a camera in about 3 years when I bought my current one, and I think I figured out what's wrong with it, so I won't have to buy one right now.
Phone has 12.
Yours has got 12, because our phones have got 10 to 15 on them even. The only difference is on the camera versus your phone is you've got a better lens on the camera than you do on the phone, although you can get the good lens to attach to your phone now.
The Canon EOS is 50.6.
How much?
50.6.
50?
Yeah.
And my EOS from, I think it's 3 years ago, because I got a 5D, I think it is, EOS. I think it's 15.
Canon's making a new one that they're trying to do 120 megapixels.
And at that point with that camera, what you could do is you could print a high quality billboard blow up of your picture and not do it like they do billboards with dots that big actually up there, which is why your LED ones work so well out there. But have little tiny dots that make up your regular pictures on billboard size picture. Now, how many of you really need to print something that big? Now, you could use that for some scientific type stuff and everything, but for the average user, they don't need anything that big. But it only had, I think it was a 0.5 megapixel, was what that original, and it was a clunky, about the size of a brick. Talking of bricks earlier, that's literally about the size that thing was. Didn't weigh like a brick, but it was about that size that you shot with. And that school bought me when I started at Athens Tech in '97, and it was a leading edge camera. And I don't remember how many hundreds of dollars they paid for that thing, but they paid several $100s on it. That its price would have been up in terms of probably the same price as that 50 that he was just looking at, since that was the Canon EOS, which should be probably priced just for the body, I would bet somewhere in the sort of $500, $600. Is that about right, Tavian?
For which one?
Was it about $500 or $600 for that 50 megapixel EOS? Or did they even price it for you there?
Let's see. I'll have to search it, it just popped up. About $2,000.
2,000. Okay.
Upwards of 3.7.
Okay. So it's higher on, but if you go buy the 15, 20 megapixel one, that is the Canon one, you're going to spend somewhere $400, $500 for the body. And it's just for the body, it's not for the lenses. Okay? Because I spent $400 on mine 3 years ago, and with the improvements they've made on it since, it still stayed. Canon stayed in that price range for a bunch of years. I thought about buying that camera anyway, because now I can shoot full video on that camera also, although I hardly have used that on it. Alright, but TCP you're going to use for doing FTP. Y'all follow on that? Because what it's going to do is it's going to make sure every bit was received at the other end. Now, there is an FTP program, which this tells you about in the chapter, or at least I'm pretty sure they do. If not here, they will tell it somewhere else too. There is also a TFTP program, which is trivial FTP. FTP is file transfer program or file transfer protocol, depending on which one we're talking about. Because file transfer program uses the file transfer protocol. Don't y'all like this alphabet soup we're doing, and then where even the same letters don't mean the same thing? It's verifying everything gets there. With the picture, we could get away with losing some bits on it, really, but we really don't want to lose any bits on it, okay? Because after all, you could be doing some cryptography on it, and you absolutely do not want to lose any bits on that picture if you're doing cryptography, right? Where you're putting your message inside the picture. Okay? And that's the way they catch when you're doing that thing too, is they're comparing when pictures go across from certain places, comparing it to where they know what that picture is, and seeing, is it the same value? If it's not, then it's suspicious there's something extra in that picture. Okay? If it's my web pages that I'm uploading, I want every bit to be sitting in Canada that's sitting on my computer, right? I can't afford for it to lose anything. If it's a video we're watching, it can lose a few, and we'll never even notice it. Okay? If it's a conversation we're having with voice over IP, that can be done, and is done with UDP also, not TCP, because you can lose some bits in the conversation, and it's perfectly fine. Because even if we're doing a landline telephone call, does every single bit of what's said on one end get to the other end? No, not always. Sometimes some static gets on there, etc. And it's really clean conversations we usually have nowadays, that there's not much stuff interferes on them, but it used to be lines weren't always clear, and depending on where y'all live or who you call, some people don't have real good telephone lines still running to them, and that the call can get staticky, etc. Okay? So UDP just sends it, and it's assumed it's received. It's the responsibility of the receiver, the receiving end, to tell the transmission end when it doesn't get it all. Okay? With TCP, the sending end makes sure that the receiving end got it all. And that's what we're going to talk about on Wednesday. So we're going to go through the three-way handshake. Okay? And see how it actually does it to know, and windowing. And windowing has nothing to do with Microsoft Windows, just to tell you that one. So now we're going to make Windows mean two different things. Okay? Because we're going to talk about Windows and windowing. And that's not anything to do with Microsoft Windows. Okay? Other than the fact that they're both on the bit of that you're seeing part of something at any point. And that's why Microsoft Windows is Windows. You don't see everything out there on your computer at any point. You're just seeing parts of it, and you can see lots of parts of things, right? And that's why it's Windows. So that you can be looking at your browser, see part of it, see part of something else, see part of something else. And see part of that game you're playing at the same time. Okay, and you're not seeing the entire thing of anything. Okay? With that, we make sure everything is received. If it's not parts of it received, the sender knows that and resends it until it all gets there. And it's a verification process. UDP, there is no verification. So TCP is going to be connection oriented, and we're going to see how that is because we're going to establish our connection. UDP is connectionless. Okay? Your telephone call is really a connection oriented type thing. You know whether the other person heard you or not. Okay? Radio and TV are connectionless. The person sitting down there at the broadcast station, broadcasting whatever it is, has no idea of whether anybody heard them or not. Okay? And they go ahead and talk on away. And there's actually been times where they actually realized there was probably nobody listening. Okay? And that they were live on the air and they kept on talking. Back in the early 80s, when the Braves were first getting onto TBS and going national on their broadcasting of it all, which are not now national, now it's just regional, but where they went to doing that way, there was one night where they were doing a Braves game that got real late running, that it had run in extra innings and got real late, and the announcers went, they didn't think anybody was listening to them any longer, probably at 1 o'clock in the morning to the Braves game, and the Braves weren't a real popular thing either at that point, and that they actually got in a conversation on them. We don't think anybody's listening, and they offered to give some people some tickets away to games, and they had 2 calls come in of people that said they wanted to get tickets, and they were doing a national broadcast of the Braves game. And there were 2 people called in to get these And they were good tickets they were giving away. It wasn't just 2 tickets to the game, but they were going to be like in a box or something there. And that they went, we don't think anybody's listening. Here, we can give these away. And it might have been even sitting with them in the broadcast booth. But it was something really good thing that if somebody was listening, they would have called to go for. And they had 2 calls to get the tickets. At that point, they did know how many people were listening to them. And it may have only been one of the 2 that the one called up somebody else and said, ooh, they're giving away tickets on there right now. Call them. Because y'all probably done that too at some point, that you've heard something on it. So, but that's connectionless, how radio and TV work. Okay? Connection oriented says we know the receiver's getting the stuff. Telephone conversation. Assuming that y'all aren't placing robocalls out there. And if you are, don't let me know about it, because if I don't get after you about it, I've got friends that will want to tear you up, and that includes probably some of your classmates. That otherwise, when you make a phone call, you know if the other person's on the other end of the line, because you hear them answer and then you go to talking. And when we talk about this bit on TCP, we're going to see it works just like on a telephone call. Okay? And you know when you both hang up. Okay? So, relating the things to real life on you. Alright. So, everything else that they've got covered here, actually, of the key terms for the chapter, actually goes into how we do the TCP handshake and the connection. And we've only got about 30 minutes left or so I'm going to wrap it up today. And then Wednesday, I'm saying Thursday in here, and when I'm over in my other class tomorrow, I'll be saying Wednesday. Go figure. So on Wednesday, at the next session of class, we will go through the 3-way handshake of TCP. And at that point, we'll be through with Chapter 9. Your Chapter 9 test, I'll set up later today to where it's available. Chapter 8 is available. So then, next week after we come back, so the week of the 8th, we'll go ahead and go into Chapter 10. Because if we finish up a few days in advance, that won't hurt, because that gives you a couple of days to work on doing y'all's cabling. Although y'all should be able to get your cabling done in one day, because you've already done it. It's just this time, remember, your neighbor's to you, so he can't help you, and I can't help you. If either of us help you, we lose points. Okay?
You said we get multiple tries, though, right?
You get to do, it doesn't count until you bring it to me and give it to me. You've got the meter to test it on. You know what it should look like on the meter. So you should have it all correct. The other part is, I do one more part. If you get completely stumped at some point, you can ask me, if you ask me something, whether it will count off on you. And I will tell you then first, if I was to answer the question, if it will cost you any points. Because it could be you've run into something that we really didn't cover very well or whatever or talk about, in which case I'm not going to charge you points on it. So I will let you ask me if you can ask me something. Does that make sense? And then you can decide if you want to go ahead and ask me anyway. Even if it's going to cost you some points, because if you flat out just can't get something, you may just have to give up a couple of points. But generally, everybody gets 100 on it. Okay? And so you're doing exactly the same thing again that you did before. You can bring some notes with you. I should have written up on the board that day for you, and if y'all will remind me that day when we go to do it, I'll write the 2 coding schemes up on the board for you, because I won't make you know them absolutely by memory. Although, if you had done the Skills USA test last week, you had to know the colors by memory. And you should know the colors by memory, and you should be getting there. But you may not have that completely down at this point, but if you go on and you do them a couple of more times, yeah, you'll get the colors on down in your head anyway. Okay? And remember, once you know one of them, you really know the other one, because the only thing you're doing is switching the orange and the green pairs. So it's not two totally different color schemes you gotta learn. Blue and the brown stays exactly in the same place, because you finished up on the right side with white brown. Remember, the blue goes inside as blue white inside the green or orange pair, depending on if you're doing A or B. Okay? For straight through, do B's, and on rollover, do B's on both ends. Okay? And the crossover, remember, you do an A and a B. Flat side up, which means without the little tab that you squeeze to pull the thing out of the plug, that's the tab side. You normally do on flat side up, except the one end of the rollover. All right, if there's not any questions, I will see you on Wednesday, and we'll do the TCP three-way handshake. And actually, how it closes it out too, but the three-way handshake is the harder piece of the whole thing, and that's the thing they'll ask you questions on test about, is the three-way handshake. And so you'll see in the book that section covered on the three-way handshake covers a couple of pages with some illustrations. I'll go through and talk that one through, and then besides the three-way handshake, which establishes it, we'll talk about the windowing and how it does the windowing when it's actually sending the data. Okay?